We're going to get started in just a minute, but we're going to wait for the top of the hour and allow people to join. Thanks for joining us. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Bonnie Byer, and we're going to talk to you about the governance transformation that we implemented with Tempo. So this is not our typical governance webinar that we schedule once every few months. That's more educational content. This time we're actually going to talk about our real case study with the fantastic apps solution partner, Tempo. So let's go ahead and start with introductions. I'm Bonnie Byer. I'm an engagement director at Valiantys, and my background is way too many years of avionics engineering, and then I led the agile transformation and Atlassian tools modernization for my company, and discovered a new passion, so I decided to become a consultant. So that's who I am and what I do now. Jason, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Jason Butner, Head of Enterprise Strategy and Planning at Valiantys. And let's see, had a conversation with Tempo's CEO about a year and a half ago or so over a shared affinity for Legos. And somehow that morphed into planning and governance. And we ended up working together on this awesome, beautiful engagement. So look forward to talking to you guys a little bit later in the webinar.
Robin, you want to go next?
Certainly. Hi, I'm Robin Morrison. I'm in the Denver, Colorado area, and I'm head of product operations at Tempo Software. My background is in software, a lot of technology in my experience, mostly on the purpose, process, and people side of helping deliver excellent technology solutions. Brandon.
Hi, I'm Brandon Grady. I'm VP of Engineering here at Tempo Software, actually not too far away from Robin in the Denver, Colorado area. I've been with Tempo for about 2 years now, and my background is in engineering in various fields. But thankfully, I discovered Agile for the world in 2012. I don't think it existed before then. So you're welcome. And have been a very strong proponent and curious observer and participant in it ever since then. So looking forward to chatting with everybody today.
All right, thank you so much. Well, so as organizations transition to the cloud, and we're seeing that more and more with all of our organizations, it is the ideal opportunity to establish a robust Atlassian governance strategy. And so we're going to talk about what are the best practices for that governance, whether we're talking about process governance or tools governance. Some of those best practices are universal. And this special session, we're going to include discussions and insights from our guests about the Tempo initiative for the Tempo ways of working, or WOW. And so that initiative focused on defining and implementing and establishing governance following all of the different acquisitions that Tempo had to bring forward their strategic portfolio management solutions. And so let's jump right in. And before we begin, let me just say a little bit about Valiantys. We are the #1 Atlassian Platinum Solution Partner, and we are global. We have, well, you can see the statistics there on the screen, hundreds of certifications, and we're actually, I think this is a little out of date because we're up to about 500 employees now, a little over 500 employees organization-wide. We can support you in pretty much all of your tools and process activities, including your migrations, ITSM, engineering, enterprise service management, customer support management, portfolio management solutions, and transformations. And so one of our core values is that we try to provide value at every interaction. That is a core value that we try to exhibit, and that's one of the reasons why we have our webinar series, where we try to offer these free educations for free to provide value to our customers and even to those people who are not our customers. After you hear about why governance matters, I hope you'll reach out to me by email or LinkedIn, and we can get started on your governance implementation. Or even if you just want to have a chat and ask some questions, I'm always happy to take those questions, and it helps me learn and refine my message as well. And so I think I already talked a little bit about our core values. So we do want to point out that we are committed to value, we are customer centric, and we can help you with all of your strategic goals. So let's go ahead and get into it. As I mentioned before, this is a special episode. This is part 2, though. We had a previous webinar with Robin and Brandon shortly after they implemented their transformation journey. We worked with them all of 2024, and it all went live in June, I think, was when you had your first PI planning. And so we had a webinar in July. And so if you want to see part 1 of that, it's out on our YouTube channel. So feel free to check that out. Brianna, you can put that link in the chat. There's a second link as well that I gave to Brianna to put in, and that's for one of our standard governance webinars. During these standard webinars, tend to be more of an introductory training on what governance is, why you care about it, and how to implement it in your Atlassian tools. I also provide a full demo of the Atlassian governance space, how we track and document our governance activities. And so if you want to watch that to get more of that educational information, I encourage you to visit that link as well. But today I'll give you a little abbreviated overview, and then we're getting into the actual interview discussion. And so, like I said, today's agenda is really going to focus on the process and tools governance transformation that Tempo performed with our support. And then we're going to but before we do that, I'm going to briefly cover the what, why, and how on governance. And then we'll be discussing the eating our own dog food, or as Brandon prefers, drinking our own champagne with the Tempo team. So what is governance? Well, governance is a word that needs a qualifier. What is being governed? If we're talking about an organization's transformation, then we need to take into account the full 3-legged stool of process, practices, people, and tools. And we need to make sure that we understand exactly what we're trying to govern. Are we governing the process? Are we governing the tools? Are we governing all of it? And governance involves many different activities, including the design decision-making, as well as how do we support it? How do we provide enablement and training for it? What are our communication plans and our change management plans around that? So governance is how you make and enforce those decisions within an organization or society. And so we're going to focus in on process and Atlassian tools governance in this webinar. And when we talk about this, the best practices or good governance practices, they're not mysterious, but we see that they often get overlooked in favor of expediency. And that typically leads to poor solutions. And that's one of the reasons quite often that governance transformations will fail because they skipped these best practices. But it's really important that you do have a full representative governance body, that all of the different roles and responsibilities that are interacting with those tools and with those processes are actually represented so that you'll get the real requirements satisfied for your organization. We also don't want people thinking in silos. We want them applying holistic systems thinking in all of that decision making. And that goes back to that representative group, because when you have that representative group, collectively, they can get out of their siloed position and think of the organization as a whole. There is a clear prioritization that will drive the best governance practices. and that's that you put the people and the culture first. That should be the priority, and then that will drive the processes. The process then drives the tools. If the reason you're implementing a process in your company is because of some tool requirement, then that indicates that some of that governance prioritization is failing. And then finally, you want to have intentional change management. You want to make sure that you're clearly communicating the why and the when and the what it does it mean for you and what's in it for you parts of your change management communications. That is a critical aspect when overlooked, is also a reason why governance transformations can fail. And so what often happens, though, is when you're looking at a transformation in the business world, a transformation is seen with a lot of skepticism. It's accompanied by groans. It's like, oh no, not again. And that's because the end users, the people, the employees, they're the ones that have to deal with the aftermath. And they're the ones that have to deal with navigating all of the changes and recognizing that most of it is probably just going to get changed again when they find out that it fails. And so what we want to consider is, I'm fumbling. So what matters, though, is that you want to make your transformation successful. And you may only get one chance at this. And so to help you implement these practices, it's really good to reach out to somebody with expertise in this. Your company doesn't do a transformation every day. So reach out to those companies that do, and that will help you. And often that tipping point where you find out that you must undergo a transformation, maybe from migrations or consolidations, where you're bringing multiple JIRA systems together. Or it might be that you've acquired new companies. And that's the case with Tempo, is that they actually had acquisitions of multiple companies. And that brought them to that tipping point. So that tipping point is when you will decide that we absolutely must undergo a transformation so that we can all operate in the same way. Tempo acquired all of these different companies: ALM Works, Old Street Solutions, RoadMonk, AlphaServe, and Liquid Planner, which was really going to make them well placed to provide that full project and portfolio management solution, capacity tracking, and financial management. And so in order to do that effectively, though, and efficiently, they knew that they had to have a unified organization that had a unified operating model of how they work. And that's when the Tempo ways of working was born as a rally cry. And so what we worked on together was establishing that process governance and Atlassian tools governance. Both work streams would follow similar activities. We needed to identify the representative team. Who are the employees and the leaders that are going to be part of that governance board? And we needed to perform the activities to make those decisions about what is actually being governed. And then we had to document the decisions and build the training and enablement models for that solution. And then we also then implemented that iteratively in phases with the support of a good change management process. So for the process, to identify the process for our ways of working, there's lots of different options that we looked at. We considered doing value stream mapping. We considered doing business process mapping type techniques. But the problem with those techniques is there's often a built-in assumption that you already have a unified process that you're trying to optimize. And instead we went back to the drawing board and we actually did our own process mapping workshop where we fully elaborated what that future state process should look like. After we completed that workshop, then we prioritized the activities that were represented. We captured it all in the backlog first, of course, and then we prioritized that backlog based on time sensitivity as to what was coming immediately, as well as what were the greatest pain points and how to address those. And so This was actually well supported. We actually did this on site in Montreal with a full group, and leadership really supported this, not only providing the budget and the time and space for all of these people to come together to work on this elaboration activity, but they participated fully as active participants and not dictating the outcomes. And so it was incredibly successful. And then in parallel, we were standing up our Atlassian tools governance. And again, the best practices are still the same. We had to identify who's that representative governance board. And then we had to start doing our elaboration of our design. What is our JIRA architecture? What is our data topology for that system? And what is the configurations for that set? We also focused in on the documentation and enablement and the change management and support model there as well. And I'm sure we're going to talk about those in more detail when we get into the interviews. But before we move into the interview, like I said, I was going to keep this front part really short. I did want to tell you that we actually, Robin and I collaborated with Don Jacobsmeyer, another consultant from Valiantys who worked on this with us, on our white paper. And this is not a little blog. This is a meaty document that really walks you through the transformation process, as well as the process elaboration steps and some of the key items within the Atlassian tools that you need to address for good governance. So I encourage you to go ahead and scan that QR code to get the white paper. I think Brianna has that link to put in the chat as well. But with that, Jason, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'll go ahead and hit stop share and let's jump right in. Let's talk to our friends here.
Awesome. Tons of cool content. So when Bonnie talked earlier about value at every interaction, some of you guys who are attending can see that several things have been posted in the chat. So those are resources for you to go ahead and download and use at your pleasure and for your benefit. Those are free. And so we want to provide value even at this interaction for you. So hopefully you find those things valuable. All right, Brandon and Robin, we get to chit chat for a little while. And I will just, I know I made a mention earlier about the Legos when I did my introduction earlier in the webinar, and I was genuinely in a conversation with the CEO to just find out how things were going with Tempo. We're strategic partners together in the Atlassian ecosystem, so let's get to know one another. And he saw that I had a Lego Coliseum in the background and asked if I was a fan of Legos as well as he was. And so we talked about those and kind of geeked out for a little while. And he said, we've got these companies we're trying to click together. Think of Legos. And there's all kinds of business analogies out there, right? But that was the one he said, we're trying to click these together. And right now we cannot see what we need to see. We have a real lack of visibility and we really need help. And the more I got to talk with him, I kind of quizzed him, is this a marketing gimmick? You're going to dog food your own product so that you can go out to the world and say, look, we even use Tempo. And he is serious as you could imagine someone being said, no, this has to work. This is a big deal for our company. And so this interview right now, just for everybody who's attending, this is Brandon and Robin who are in the thick of it, drove it from idea and conception of idea through to reality and are still executing this in their company and getting benefit from it. This is straight from their mouths on how it worked. So yes, this is marketing. We're trying to tell the world, tell you guys what we did. Hopefully it's valuable to you, value at every interaction, but this is real. And so I just want to give you an opportunity. I'll be quiet for a moment. I just kind of want you to familiarize everybody here watching. What was Tempo Wow to you? Kind of tell us what it was supposed to be, what happened. So Brandon, maybe you want to take a stab.
Yeah, let me start and then I'll pass it off to Robin for her input as well. But as you might guess and hope, I actually talked to Mark even before he talked to you, Jason. And I found it a little bit ironic. Bonnie said you want to lead with culture and people. This actually started out as a tools project, if you'd believe it. Tempo makes great tools. Tempo makes tools for strategic portfolio management. Now we at the time were still sort of nascent in that product strategy. So it was really a lot about why aren't we using our own tools? We've got all these issues. We've got these issues with visibility. We've got these issues with understanding what's going on all the time and capacity management and all this stuff. Why aren't we just using our tools? And when I was talking to Mark, I took that as an opportunity to zoom out a little bit and say, yeah, not only that, Mark, we do have that visibility. It's just done 7 different ways. So to go back to what Bonnie had mentioned earlier, 4 years ago, Tempo was 7 different companies, and about a little bit before this last year, a crescendo to the point where it just became untenable. We felt like we were pretty close to being done with our acquisition marathon, and really needed to set the stage for, we need to not only use our own tools, we need to do things the same way. We need to make things predictable. And to do that, we have to provide some guidelines and some barriers, some boundaries for people so that they can live within those things versus just running amok and doing great things, certainly, but not everybody was able to take advantage of it or really realize it. So that's really where it turned from. The initial product name was called Tempo on Tempo, so Tempo on Tempo products. And we kind of stole it and said, well, now it's called Tempo Wow because it's our ways of work. What really made it successful, I'd say, and Bonnie already hinted at this, we had I would call them relatively new CTO and head of product at the time who were experiencing and feeling the pain that we were feeling as well. And they said, no, this absolutely must be done. And we need to be involved. You saw them in the picture that Bonnie flashed up before. So we had very, very good buy-in from executive leadership, all the way down to our directors and people on the ground floor doing the actual work at our company. So we had great representation across the board. But yeah, it kind of started as a tools project, oddly enough, and then eventually morphed into something that became much bigger and much more impactful, I would say, because we were able to tackle it, like Bonnie said, from the people and culture perspective first, while taking pretty strong guidance on, hey, if there's one of our tools that does something that we need, we are absolutely going to use that tool. We're not going to go out and use a competitor's tool, or we're not going to use spreadsheets for something. Spreadsheets is always a last gasp kind of a situation. Like, we're going to use our tools, and we're going to learn where the pain points are. We're going to learn where they're challenging. We're going to use that to help feed our own backlog to improve it for our own customers. But that's about the time when we decided we really need somebody to help us with this. This is not something we can run alone. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's general history. Bonnie, I thought, set it up really well. I don't know, Robin, if you have other insights you want to share.
Well, I just wanted to share a little bit about the outcomes that we saw, more from a perspective standpoint versus just all the using our tools and learning and things like that. But because we're a product organization, a lot of those pain points were felt not only within the product and engineering organization, but also by our key stakeholders, like our product marketing group, our go-to-market teams, because they didn't always know, what is engineering and product working on? When are we going to be able to tell our customers about what else is coming? How can we plan our release strategies? And so not only was clarity important for our teams to understand, but also for the rest of the organization, so we could really work as one company. And because of all this work that we're going to be talking about, I wanted to just share that now there is insight there, and we're continuously improving, but our leadership is appreciative of the fact that we have a tempo, a cadence of when we're working on work that our engineering team can say, this is when we're going to be done. And it not only affects leadership, but it also affects individual contributors because they're able to do their work better. And one person, I wrote this down so I could read it, but in my experience, this is from a technical writer. In my experience, it's rare to have such a deeply impactful tool, which was part of our release hub that we created, and the associated cultural change that can be directly traced back to one initiative. So that's really powerful, that it helps our overall company work better together.
Awesome.
It's so
Awesome.
gratifying. It's just so cool to hear you guys talk about this,
Mhm.
because it's like, oh, I loved working with this group and I love hearing the results.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned earlier, you guys were in the thick of it together. So to be where we are now and still have a good opinion of it, I think somebody mentioned how many transformations fail out there, and it's the number according to McKinsey is around 70%. So that's why people a lot of times go, oh no. And so to be this far into it and have so much positivity and good results, like you said, Robin, focusing on outcomes, that's awesome. So speaking of that, how far into it are you guys? You've now had 3 PIs, and I believe these are quarterly planning events. So how's it going? How's the third different than the first?
Yeah, I can take that. And then Brandon, feel free to chime in. So first of all, like you said, 3, we have another one coming up in just over a week. So that'll be our 4th. And what I'll say is it's smoother each time. The first one was very chaotic. It felt very messy as we were, of course, we were getting ready for it and creating lots of processes, and we did a lot of change management, education, enablement. But as we were going through our first PI planning, we kept realizing, oh, we should have done this, or other people said, oh, we should have done that. And we unfortunately created more potentially chaos because we added new processes during our planning, like right in the middle. So it was fairly disruptive. The second time, we reduced that extra churn and it was better. And then the third time, for those of us who were running it, honestly, it was really boring because the teams were doing so much better, not only because we had created our processes and we knew what we were doing and the teams were comfortable with it, but the first and second time, we also had many more escalations to leadership about questions around prioritizations, questions about dependencies, which one should we do first and second. By the third time, there were much fewer of those issues raised to leadership to get involved with, because the teams were coming together and addressing those things as well. So each time is smoother. So we'll see how our 4th one is too.
Yeah, and we as a leadership team are doing everything we can to make sure that we keep them on their toes, and disrupting the plan at the last second, which is true. It's true in every planning exercise. But what I think Robin and her team have done a fantastic job of, and Valiantys helped us start this out, was it takes time to get that ownership, and the team's finally starting to take ownership. Finally is the wrong term, right? It took 2 times for them to just take ownership and say, okay, I know what's going on here. I may have a question here, but I'm confident enough that I can make a decision and move forward in the interest of what we're trying to accomplish overall. And that's been super gratifying to see.
Yep. And is it okay that we kind of mentioned there were 4 real processes that were in scope for this, right? So what was it? It was pre-PI preppy planning.
Preppy planning, yeah,
Yep, PI planning, execution, and release management. Is that correct?
that's right. Yeah.
Yes, and then underlying that of course is the tooling aspect, because that supports all 4 major process areas.
Right. So along the course of getting through the engagement itself to, the first PI, and then now you've done 3 and about to do 4. Tell me if there were any wow moments. Like it's all great. It's all good. People are taking ownership. It's all that, but was there a wow moment for you? You were like, oh my gosh, this is working. This is better than what we had.
I mean, I'll let Robin answer, but I would say it probably was with our the third PI, where it was, yeah, this is working now. And we wanted it to become boring. And I think what that did was it unlocked the next step, which when we went into this little more than a year ago, Bonnie will remember, we said this is way too big. We need to focus on the important bits. So we tried to address the 80-20 rule, right? Where 80% of the benefit here is going to be inside the product and engineering organization. So we're going to focus our efforts there. And we're going to kind of leave some of these other outlying, not outlying, but just other areas alone, and hoped that by us adopting the practices and whatnot and seeing those benefits, it might organically start to permeate the rest of the organization. That hasn't necessarily happened yet, but now we're seeing opportunities where we can start to insert ourselves into other parts of the organization to get to that cadence, to get to that regular rhythm that we've started to establish with this Tempo Wow process. I don't know, Robin, if you have a different view on that.
I think what I would say is just that people are now advocating for a continuous improvement of the process. And so I feel like people are bought in to it and want to make it better. And I'll go back to what I was sharing about how we're getting feedback from the rest of the organization. Like, when is PI planning? I want to understand what you're planning so that I can plan my work too. So there's an expectation of how, when we plan, that there's outcomes that other teams that aren't part of our planning, but we do offer an invitation to different groups as well to participate in our kickoff and other things, but they're starting to plan their work around it so that we have more predictability for the rest of the company too.
Yep. Yep. Good stuff. So PI planning, what is it? We mentioned it was quarterly. Some folks out there might be curious, are you guys satisfied with that frequency? Is it too long? Are you guys able to be adaptable in between quarters and between planning increments? Can you kind of talk to that a little bit?
To some degree, yes, but I'll also acknowledge that we are actively starting to try out shorter PIs, right? I think we initially wanted to go with quarter-long PIs for a couple of reasons. First, to match the cadence of business. Businesses operate on quarters, so it made sense. And secondly, we didn't want to have to, it took a lot to prepare those first couple of PIs, and we didn't want to really just put that much stress on a certain number of people that often. But that said, once it became boring after PI 3, that opened up some of the questions of, we're sort of doing PI planning throughout the PI anyway. Would it make more sense for us to tighten these loops up? So we are going to be looking at, and I think our upcoming PI is going to be slightly shorter than a quarter. The one after that, we're planning to reduce it by another iteration as well, and looking for kind of that sweet spot. Because we believe that we've got enough in place now from a process and acceptance perspective that it's not so onerous to actually go through a PI plan anymore. So tightening those loops up is something that we are actively pursuing right now.
Awesome. And Robin, did you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. Yeah, just that, well, I guess I will. Some of our groups do this mid-PI pivot. And so what Brandon's talking about is, let's make that more consistent across so that we know when those times are, because otherwise it's very dependent on what's happening in each group. So that's why we're looking to shorten it up too, because it is happening. It's not like you cannot change during the entire quarter. But we're recognizing, since it's happening, let's try to put expectations for all of us at the same time again. Yeah.
I have a very serious question at this junction of the interview. Since your company is based on this concept of tempo and harmony and music, is there a song that best describes this engagement?
I think so. I've got my own answer for this. Robin may have another one, but Jason, I think you know this. We have a tempo band. They're great. They play every year at our company kickoff. And the favorite one I've seen so far, every year they're great. But my favorite one I've seen so far is "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen. And I think that really captures the essence of what we're going to do here with Tempo Wow. We're going to run into problems, we're going to have issues, but don't stop me, because we're going forward. We're going to move forward with it. The other reason I really like it is because it was my favorite scene out of my favorite zombie movie of all time, Shaun of the Dead. Yeah, where kill the queen. Don't quote me on that. Hopefully, this is recorded, isn't it? No. But I think that's appropriate too, right? Like, there's zombies coming at you. They're trying to crumble your practices and your commitment to things. And we're grouping together and making sure that we're keeping those zombies at bay. So yeah, don't stop me now. It's an easy one.
Freaking love that. Do you play that at your PIs, like as your step up music, or?
maybe we'll add it to an upcoming podcast potentially. We'll see.
I love that. Yep. Cool. Good deal. All right. Should we go back to our regularly scheduled programming? Okay. All right. So we left off on adaptability. So quarter-long PIs, we may be shortening those. We're adjusting, we're adapting. I love the adaptability. That is, by the way, McKinsey doesn't just have the bad news of 70% of transformations fail. And they do there's a really awesome report out there on like why that happens, but they also have the good news on like the ones that do succeed, what do they have in common? And adaptability is way at the top of the list. So it's so cool to see that you guys aren't locked in. Like you're not dogmatic. We know SAFE gets a lot of, it's benefited so many people, but some people become dogmatic and then it loses its appeal because now the business is suffering and they're just like, no, we're going to stay safe all the way. And I love that you guys are adjusting. On that note, not just your methodology adjusting, but when literally business changes and you have to change your strategy, what do you guys do? How do you approach that?
Well, because we're talking about our process and we've talked about how we have these quarterly planning cadences. When we schedule our PI planning events, I will tell you that we are very, and Brandon is so helpful on this, we stick to those dates. So what I will also tell you is these pivots and changes pretty much happen almost right before every single PI planning event. And so I will say it's been challenging for our teams because we aren't changing our dates. It's like an airplane that's scheduled to leave, it's leaving at that time, and we are not changing the schedule. And so when those changes happen right before, it unfortunately has created, a lot of burden on our teams in order to get ready. And our teams, meaning our product managers, our engineering leadership, we try not to burden the working teams so much with that, but in order to be ready then for the teams to plan, it's put a lot of burden on them. As I mentioned, we still have held our PI plannings on schedule, but when we have these boundaries, it does ideally give us this runway to be ready for it. And we have a PI planning process that we have a cadence that is occurring during execution where we have these milestones when we are supposed to be ready with our planned themes, with our planned initiatives that are going to help us achieve our business goals. And then it allows us to make sure that we're ready with our features and epics for our teams. This is a way we have a hierarchy that might be different from other organizations. What we do as leaders is also just try to make sure that that's front loaded, that those decisions are made as early as they can. And I think we're getting better at that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Hope that
that's
helps
awesome.
answer that question. Yeah, it has been difficult because in addition to getting our teams ready for this cadence, we're also trying to work with our executive team, and we don't always, own that decision about what their cadence is for those important decisions that they're making.
Well, right. And if you didn't have this platform set up the way that you did, it might be more difficult to absorb and handle those changes. So, one thing we talk with business leaders a lot about is not just the visibility, but then predictability. And even changes will always happen. And a lot of times last minute, because there's nothing like a good deadline, right? And so it's not just then predictability, but then like we talked about adaptability and being able to adjust. And sometimes businesses tend to want to, this is the plan the work the plan, stick with it. I came from a business background, many eons ago, where I was on the generation fleet side of the house and electrical generation, and everything was under a roof. It was predictable. The board loved the predictability of the business. And then the transmission side of the business exploded in investments. And that was like, you're digging in the ground and you're outdoors in the weather, and the board was freaking out because, it was less predictable. And how do we adjust? And so the platform and what you guys have implemented seems like it has really helped the leadership as well to understand why things change, when they change, and how to adapt to those changes.
Yeah, and I think also if we are able to shorten our PIs, it'll allow for more accommodation of those changes because that happens in business. It just does.
It just does. It's never gonna stop. It's the only constant. So let's see here. Which tools, since I know this wasn't, this morphed from just primarily a tools engagement to a ways of working, but it still was tools. So what tools have been most useful during this and critical to your success?
Well, I'll start and then maybe Brandon, you can add on. First of all, as a person who loves people, process, and tools working together to achieve purpose and outcomes, it's been so much fun to work at Tempo because that is what we do. So the first tool product, or it really feels like such a good solution to me, is something that we have called Structure. And honestly, I don't even know how I worked before I used Structure at other organizations, because it pulls all of your data together in Jira and provides many different opportunities to cut the data and have one view of the way you want to see the data. It also allows us to have all kinds of calculations, so we can have auto risk levels on how our features are being developed based on how many epics and stories are completed. So it provides so much great visibility across the organization. We also have a road mapping solution for strategic roadmaps. So we are able to communicate what our plans are in a really visual way, both to our teams and then the rest of the organization. Custom charts is a really beautiful, simple data visualization tool, and we use it both in Confluence as well as Jira to be able to provide visibility. We use it both during PI planning, so we see what the progress is of our planning on key features. Are we in trouble? Are we not? And then during execution. And then our teams use Capacity Planner during PI planning so they can validate that they have the capacity to do the work that they're planning against. And then we also use Portfolio Manager in order for us to be able to provide visibility into what our longer term roadmap is based on estimates of what our engineering team has provided and compare that with our product goals. So we use a lot of our tools. They're all really, really helpful. And then I'm going to ask Brandon to talk about, there's still some pain points and we're looking to solve those as well.
Yeah, there's plenty of pain points. Sadly, we don't have a perfect strategic portfolio management solution yet. But one thing that dog fooding or champagning your own solution does is it points those out, right? And we've got real pain in a lot of areas. A lot of it has to do with just this higher level planning, right? Just what sort of scenarios, like what if I decided to shorten this or tighten the scope up of this, and how might we reconfigure our teams to make this flow a little bit more easily? We still don't have a solution for that, but we're building one right now, and it's a lot of that's been based on our internal pain, just having gotten through some of the blocking and tackling of just being able to visualize what we're doing. So as our strategic portfolio management product strategy matures and evolves, those are the types of questions that we're starting to answer, and it's pretty exciting. A lot of my teams right now are helping to build that out, and so we're deep in the trenches of figuring out the best way forward on how strategic portfolio management, adaptive planning, and capacity, all this stuff kind of combines together into a platform that can really like assist you in doing these types of like weird little analyses that kind of go through every planning process. So I'm really excited about how that's all going to come together in the next several months.
Very cool. What's one of those weird little processes that you guys are looking at? So,
I think that's probably, are we on an NDA here? I think I can
or is
say
that,
that.
yeah, maybe we're crossing a line on a public webinar, but we're all excited. We're all
What I
excited.
would say is one of the things, like we still end up going to spreadsheets far too often. And even when we started the WOW initiative a year ago, one of our mantras, one of our principles was, no more spreadsheets. And here we find ourselves a year later and we still have to go to spreadsheets on occasion. So I would call that's just a weird process. I don't care who you are. Like, spreadsheets are fantastic for what they're fantastic for. They're not fantastic for planning, and yet we still have to go to them on occasion. So we'd love to make them obsolete in the planning context and leave them with
Yep.
finance where they belong.
One thing I want to continue to harp on, as long as I have a public platform here and I've got you guys in the room, so I'm not going to surprise you or put you in a bad spot. One thing I have been on a mission though is optimization. So speaking of spreadsheets, years ago, I had a spreadsheet that a consultant had built, and it literally was a spreadsheet with macros that ran optimization scenarios, and it was wrong most of the time. It was cumbersome, it was hard, it was heavy. I would love to see, and a lot of the businesses we work with would love to see being able to put in different constraints onto a particular portfolio and say, okay, here's budgetary constraints. Here are certain strategic initiatives that we want to prioritize above others, and build multiple scenarios that are all optimized to maximize those certain constraints. I'd love to see something like that. I think, we could go take that to our customers and get a whole lot of really cool feedback. So I don't know how much of that is on the table, but that's something I've been really looking for out in the market.
It really sounds like that was planned, because I saw a demo and I think they're heading that way.
Well, I think it'll be a really big deal. So we spent a lot of time, I missed a lot of time at home with my family because, the CFO would call on a Friday, and on Monday they wanted to see 3 different scenarios for how to completely retool the portfolio over the next 5 years, which meant I was sitting in an office with, 20 other engineers all weekend doing it in Excel. And so if you could, really improve that process, that could be awesome. I would go back in time and get time back with my family. That would be really cool. So let's see here. There are some cultural aspects. So, you talked about people process, not just the tools. How do you think this impacted the culture at Tempo? And what cultural aspects helped this to be more successful?
So maybe I'll start a little bit, and then again, Brandon, feel free to chime in. But as we said, 7 different companies, different products. People had their own ways of working, all smaller companies. So this process has been a catalyst for creating a common ways of working, at least in our product and engineering organization. And so what it's done is it's helped to tear down the walls between the product and engineering groups. So we're able to operate, at least in the planning process, but it also builds across other aspects of what they're doing as well. And what's exciting about it is, to me, that it's not only the fact that it affects our processes and how teams are coming together and working together, but it's also helping us build better products for our customers, because it's easier for our teams to come together and build cross-product functionality that is going to be beneficial. Like we're talking about this future state where things are, really combined to provide powerful views into the work. And I want to go back to why this is successful, because there were so many people who are participating in this. So first of all, this change initiative came from the top. So you spoke with our CEO. It transformed even there from being about tools to culture and a common way of working, which isn't done. We're continuing to build it, but it came from the top, recognizing that this was a really important step for our company to grow in. And then, I don't know if it was because of that or also because our new SVP of product and CTO also recognized how important it was, so that they could see visibility. They needed everybody to work together in a more harmonious way, and to have the data behind it so they could have transparency. So without top level leadership and support, we absolutely wouldn't have been successful. But the other aspect of it is that we created what we called a Tempo Wow core team. And this core team was made up of different functional areas and representatives from every single acquisition, except for one that had just occurred like right before we started. But because, as Bonnie also talked about, this wasn't just looking at what was working in one area because we didn't really have one way of working and then improving it. It was having all these people come together and say, what can we design together? And so it was absolutely a group-based creation of what this process is. Absolutely. Did we look to SAFe for inspiration? Did we look to Scrum? Did we look for other areas for inspiration? Yes, but we really created it our own way. And finally, I just wanted to, again, say thank you to Valiantys, because when any company is going through this type of a transformation and have this kind of adoption, it's so helpful to have somebody else who's coming in who can provide that outside perspective, as well as the expertise, because you've done it before. And so you automatically have credibility from the outside, which really helps people, and people can ask you questions. And we know it's not because you're just trying to make a change to support your own way, so it was really helpful. Anyway, I think all those things came together and really helped optimize our culture, and again, optimizing our products for our customers, which is really cool to see too.
I think one
What
thing
about you,
I'll add to
Brandon?
that real quick, and this is still pretty new in my head, but one thing I see signs of happening was maybe a little unexpected, but and I referenced it earlier, it's this ability to make decisions within your realm quickly and to move quickly, right? That's what we all want to happen. We want our teams to have just the right amount of information so that when they come up on a question, they can just answer the question and move forward. And I'm starting to see that happen more and more. I hope it continues. I hope it's not just wishful thinking on my part, but I believe that is in some part due to this transformation that we've made, to this commitment that we've made to a ways of working and setting the boundaries, and then consistently ensuring that teams are empowered to make these types of choices and to push the business forward.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that insight. I want to point out a few people as we wrap up here and then go to questions. Both of you were huge champions, so I know you're not going to do a whole lot of like, patting yourselves on the back here in the webinar. So I'll take an opportunity to just do it. And so, Robin, I think one thing that was really key is we were all initially thinking value stream mapping or some metamorphosis of that. And you mentioned earlier that it didn't turn out to be that. And I think some people are so afraid when you start out on some type of transformation or change in the business that if we don't do the thing we said we were going to do, that we've been talking about with the business, and then they're like, what? This is different, and that's freaking us out. And then you think I'm going to fail. And you were just so willing to, and it wasn't like, you were willing to embrace and be a part of that change and own it and go back to the business and, change course. And that wasn't a failure. I don't think anybody viewed that as a failure. It was literally the foundation for success for the entire project, was to morph and change. So what most people are scared of, changing what we've been talking about, actually ended up being your biggest strength. And you were so willing to head that up. That's awesome. Brandon, one thing that was, two things that were really huge just from a culture standpoint, I think, was you naming the initiatives themselves with Tempo on Tempo and Tempo Wow. Many people might look at that as a small thing, but we have so many times that will work, and it's just kind of this thing, right? And so you start to describe the thing, let's put together a statement of work, and there's all these parts that we're going to do. And that's not a thing, that's a bunch of parts. And so what you did is you cast a vision, and then when there's vision for this is where we're going, the parts support the vision. If they don't support the vision, they don't go in as a part. And so you're not leading a collection of parts to say, we're going to deliver all these parts to you. We're leading a vision, we're going somewhere, and anything that gets in is a part of that vision that supports it, or it's out. And I think that's actually it might seem like a, haha, that's cute, it's got a name thing, but I think it was a really big deal and a good, it was a big part of your leadership. And also one thing you did was this podcast we didn't talk about, but it was fun, it was lively, it was relevant, it was helpful, and you as a leader probably could have delegated all of that very easily, but you took ownership of it and led it, and I think that's a big deal. So when Robin says things like our leaders were bought in and driving and supporting, it wasn't just like you were up in some high seat delegating. I think you provided a lot of really critical leadership in a really fun way too. So these things should be fun, and I think that was a big deal from what I saw. I also just want to point out a few people on our team, and that would be Bonnie herself, who at Valiantys uniquely drives the value of governance and ways of working, business engineering. She is the master. You know, so there you go. She's not going to pat herself on the back. We document these things so that we can get better and better over time. But you mentioned a few other people. So Don Jacobs-Meyer was there along the way helping. We had other people in different parts of this engagement that were just migration efforts that were part of the team. And then in the attendees right now is Dietmar, who is also with Valiantys, and he has a passion for this kind of a thing. So I just wanted to say that yes, we have literally like the global sensei of this on right now. You see her, Bonnie, but in the background, we've got other people on the team who are equally passionate, just equally capable. And so we've got a pretty big bench strength to go out there and take this. And we're very passionate about it. And you've increased our passion because it's a successful transformation. You know, this is something that is very doable, and many companies that we work with are not where they want to be. So if you are one of those companies listening in, you've seen two people who could have very easily said, nah, I wouldn't do it, run for the hills, you know, but you guys have seen the benefit, are walking in it and continuing to iterate on it. And that's awesome. And so we want to be able to iterate on that and continue to help other companies out there. You know, this isn't just all about marketing and revenue stream. This is real. And I kind of mentioned there were a lot of weekends I sat there in an office instead of with my family. That was my choice, but it doesn't have to be a choice, because there are better ways of doing things. And if we put those tools and processes and get the right people in place, you got a lot fewer missed family events and things like that, right? So it's a real value statement there. I'm going to pause. Thank you so much. And I just want to end with one more serious question for you guys. If this whole way of working, so the Tempo Wow, since you're the master brander, Brandon, if you could name your way of working after a superhero, who would it be?
Yeah, that's easy. I mean, yeah, no, it's easy. Like some people would say, oh, it's Superman because it's super and it's omnipresence and such good vision. It's not. What it is, it's Green Lantern. And the reason why it's Green Lantern is because there's not just one Green Lantern. You know, there's thousands of Green Lanterns throughout the universe. And that's really what this sort of transformation takes. Is it's not just one or two heroes, it's everybody kind of stepping up when they need to step up. And so it's Green Lantern, 100%. Easy question. What's next?
Bam. That was not where I thought you'd go. Like you said, Superman, you've got all your, oh my gosh. Robin, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I love that, because I completely agree. This is all about the team, all about every single person at Tempo contributing to our wow. So yeah, I love that, Brandon.
I wanted to make sure I helped Brandon avoid the traps. I didn't tell him at all who the superhero should be, but as we prepared for this, I was like, don't say Iron Man or Batman, because everybody loves Batman and Iron Man, but it takes a lot of money for them to do what they do, and we don't want that branded as part of this. So those are the two that weren't allowed. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We do have people on, we do have attendees. So if we have questions, I would love to take those right now. We're here to take a few questions, and we've got a couple minutes. So we'll take just a second. And I don't know, Bree, if the chat is, if the attendees chats are visible, or if they can just raise their hand.
access to the Q&A feature. So if they look at the bottom bar, you should see that. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop those in there for us.
Yep. Yep. Awesome. Well, I would love to do this again sometime. You guys are heading into your fourth PI. So maybe another few months go by, you adjust your PIs, you continue to iterate on this, and then, you know, next time SPM will be out and it'll be all the rage and it'll just be kicking butt, and we'll talk more about that then as well. So you guys can reach out. You see this here, upcoming webinars and classes. This is all free content. If you guys click on these links, of course, you can connect with me or Bonnie, but training and events calendar and the YouTube channel. There's more content on YouTube from Valiantys than there is for the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay, so just saying. Last year, I believe we released almost one piece of content, free, valuable content per day. I think it was close to 365. So we're not playing around, and we just want you guys to have this value. So I think we're right there at time. I just want to say thank you again to Brandon and Robin and the entire Tempo team. This has been awesome. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jason. Thanks, Bonnie.
All right.
Have a great day. Feel free to reach out if you do have any questions. I'm happy to share more. Thank you.